On behalf of the University of Southern California Disaster Preparedness Group, I am joined today by my colleagues Kira Eicher, Lisa Anaquinzi, Judith Sepulveda, and Farah Rafai, and myself, Ashley Darnell. We would like to thank you very much for taking the time to review our plan. We will be discussing today the 2017 to 2019 Tsunami Preparedness Plan for Padang, Indonesia.
Analysis of research related to disaster risk reduction and disaster preparedness in Pacific Rim countries shows a high emphasis on scientific-based knowledge. Although there's a lot of information regarding risk reduction, it is mainly information that is shared among the scientific community or in science jargon, which is not appropriate for those who might be affected by risk. There has also been a great focus on early warning systems and early action. Although this has proven to be an effective form of risk reduction and preparedness, many developing countries are still working on putting systems in place. For example, in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, there were no early warning systems in place, which could have saved thousands of lives. It wasn't until after the devastation when an Indian Ocean warning system was established in 2005. There has also been minimal collaboration of disaster planning with urban and regional planners. This is usually done in collaboration with local authorities and the government. Risk reduction can be incorporated in city design and development for future protection from disasters. Lastly, we have also seen minimal to no community involvement in risk reduction and preparedness. The community has a wealth of information and knowledge regarding the location where they live and can help in planning, but also in informing the community. There are risk reduction frameworks that are gaining popularity and can help reduce risk. The first framework is from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and it has 5 steps. Prevention involves integrating activities that help avoid impacts of a disaster altogether. Mitigation are measures taken to limit the impacts of a disaster. Preparedness are those activities that are pre-planned, timely, and effective responses by both individuals and communities. The last 2 steps, recovery and reconstruction, focus on activities after a disaster has taken place. The second framework, which is similar to the first, is a Sendai framework with 4 steps. First, understanding disaster risk. Second, strengthening governance managing disaster risk. Third, investing in disaster risk reduction. And lastly, enhancing preparedness and redeveloping with disaster-minded approaches. Overall, these are approaches and policies that can be put in place to ensure impacts of a disaster are limited. Lastly, to refocus and put emphasis on the power of communities, research is shifting to show that this can be incorporated in both risk reduction and preparedness. There is a heavier push for integration of community-based knowledge with the traditional scientific-based knowledge, as well as using collective information and having very much community involvement. This also means providing programs and education that are culturally sensitive and appropriate for protection of the people and their property. This interaction will build knowledge to help avoid future human, economic, and social losses from disasters.
Our chosen country is Indonesia. Located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, Indonesia is a prime example of a lower-income country that sees numerous types of natural disasters yearly. Within the past 50 years, Indonesia has been struck with 7 tsunamis, including the 2004 tsunami that devastated the northwest town of Banda Aceh. Indonesia also has an informed risk index of 4.5 out of 10, meaning that it is very high risk for damages caused by natural disasters. The informed risk index is compiled of 3 different categories: hazard, which rates the likelihood of a natural disaster occurring; vulnerability, which rates how susceptible the communities are to these disasters; and lastly, coping capacity, which is based on the resources available to alleviate the economic damages created by these disasters. Our last major reason for choosing Indonesia, other than its location and informed risk index, is the worker migration that is taking place. Many women and men are migrating towards Asia, looking for more stable work, causing Indonesia's economic growth to cease. Our hope is to stabilize the country by preparing its people against tsunamis and in turn keeping the working class in Indonesia, building the economy. Padang is a coastal city located on the western side of Indonesia, on the island of Sumatra. It has a population of 870,000 people, 50% of which live on the coast in low-lying areas. Padang is located vertically next to the Sunda megathrust, which experts feel will be the next location for a large magnitude earthquake to strike, causing a potentially catastrophic tsunami. If this comes true, we fear that similar results to what took place in 2004 in Banda Aceh will be seen in Padang. If the experts are right, then Padang needs to be ready for the next time the situation occurs. The experts have warned the government officials in Padang, and some efforts have begun to protect the city. The National Data Buoy Center has 39 deep ocean assessment and reporting of tsunami, DART for short, stations, 7 of which are located in the Indian Ocean to detect early signs of tsunami formation and send signals to officials of Indonesia to alert the public. However, these stations, combined with the location of the Sunda megathrust and the speed of a tsunami, give the public only 30 minutes to act. Unfortunately, this is not enough to guarantee everyone's safety. Evacuation maps are available for civilians, and 2 types of evacuation have been noted. The horizontal evacuation, which is the recommended form, uses the evacuation maps to guide the civilians along the city streets to higher ground and safety. The drawback of this evacuation style is that the safe ground is 3 to 5 kilometers away, and people only have 30 minutes to get there. Another drawback is the use of motor vehicles to escape, causing traffic jams, leaving many people stranded. The second form of evacuation, vertical, uses 1, 2, and 3-story temporary escape structures to hold people above sea level when the tsunami hits. At this time, there are 13 of these structures found in Padang City, which can only hold around 30,000 people for a short period of time until rescue arrives.
Considering the devastation and destruction of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, and the high likelihood that Padang would be severely impacted if another tsunami were to occur, we believe that it is highly necessary to establish a tsunami preparedness and risk reduction plan for the city of Padang. Our objective is to develop a tsunami preparedness and risk reduction plan in order to coordinate community responses and decrease potential fatalities in Padang. We believe this plan will successfully reduce Padang's vulnerability to a tsunami and decrease the potential fatal and destructive impact a tsunami can have on the community. We aim to develop and implement key aspects of this plan in conjunction with the State University of Padang by identifying gaps in current risk reduction, improving existing evacuation plans, and educating locals on safety procedures and routes. An incredibly important aspect of reducing risk in Padang is to identify evacuation sites and routes. This will be completed by the research team by meeting with local officials to determine the safest, quickest, and most appropriate routes to reach safety zones. We will also connect with community religious leaders in Padang, such as the local imams, and educate and train them to use existing loudspeaker communication systems, which are currently used for the Islamic call for prayer, to be also used as a tool to signal an emergency. In order to get to these safety zones in a timely manner, we will connect with local labor companies to establish and build various footpaths and trails with reflective marker systems that will lead to these safety zones. These will indicate the distance to and from safety zones and will also allow for safe and efficient evacuations to occur at all hours of the day. We will also work to identify strategic roads and widen them to decrease traffic congestion. We have planned to plant mangroves in key locations in the city to serve as a defense mechanism against tsunamis. This will help reduce destruction and help preserve important infrastructure within the city if a tsunami were to occur. We also plan to establish an educational media campaign that will help educate the locals on what they should do and how they should proceed with evacuating. Along with this, we plan to lobby at the national level to have working buoys in the ocean to alert of a potential tsunami. Demonstrated here are images of our media campaign. These are signs written in the local language depicting where to go to be safe from the tsunami. It is of the utmost importance that the local population understands the importance of the plan and also what they should do if a tsunami strikes. We plan to educate the locals through community drills and using local imams and religious leaders. Community members will be encouraged to come out to outreach events by local officials and also through incentives such as free waterproof pouches in which important documents can be stored. At these community outreach events, we will have question and answer sessions and develop an election system where the local community will elect screen leaders to help with evacuations and maintaining protocol. Because of the importance and need of receiving tsunami warnings and signals, we also plan to lobby for the use of Panasonic communication. This will allow for warnings to be sent to military bases in Padang, local government organizations, and national tsunami centers in Indonesia. As Japan is a leading nation in this field, we hope to enter into trade agreements such as trade in local fish, which is high in demand due to Japan's current environmental crisis, to make this possible. And last but not least, we plan to develop strategies and partnerships with established organizations to assist with relief and aid. These include organizations such as the Red Cross and the World Health Organization.
Our timeline for completing this project is based on a 2-year time frame, in which time we will be in Padang cooperating directly with community members and local leaders. The first step in our plan is to establish the evacuation needs of the city and determine appropriate sites for the new paths, forms of transportation used during evacuation, and existing infrastructure such as roadways that need improvement. Our next task will be coordinating with the local imams to discuss the logistics of using the call to prayer speakers for emergency communication as well as technology training. The next step is to connect with local farmers to determine the areas in need of vegetation and mangrove development. And then the local labor forces will need to be given the routes for the footpaths and the safe zone clearings that will be constructed along the path after a safe distance inland. As construction moves forward, we will produce billboard materials that are less easily defaced due to their height, promoting the use of these footpaths during a disaster. Finally, we plan to create a social event at the end of the path, which will be incentivized by sealable plastic document sleeves to hold personal information. This will not only encourage the community to familiarize themselves with the paths, but also to remember to only bring the essentials in an evacuation. As you can see, these goals will be met during a 2-year time frame, but we do also have long-term goals. During our year 1, we would like to develop alternative routes out of the city, begin planting our mangroves, set up the imams with technology, run a media campaign about our new footpaths, and identify any stakeholders or potential international cooperation to be had in the future. By mid-year 2, we would like to set the community event to familiarize the community with the safe zones, set up reflectors at the kilometer markers along the footpaths, and schedule test drills of emergency communication. Our long-term goals include developing the coastal areas by planting more trees and developing the mangroves to help shield from future tsunamis. We would also like to widen strategic roads in and out of the city, and we would like to coordinate with a USC research project in cooperation with a local university to determine whether these actions are suitable to be applied to other communities in Indonesia.
Strong collaborations are crucial when implementing any form of strategy or programming. Our team has specifically decided to collaborate with organizations on the local, national, and international level. This will ensure that our strategic goals are met and also allow for collaborative relationships to foster, which may allow for goals outside of our scope of work to be achieved and developed, which will lead to further sustainability and preparedness. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and the Indonesian National Disaster Management Agency would work together to ensure policy is regulated in regards to humanitarian affairs in Padang. USAID and the OISCA would work to preserve biodiversity by partnering with local farmers to plant mangroves. USAID would also work with the Red Cross and its affiliate organizations to provide emergency goods and resources, as well as preparedness strategies, education, and drills. Japan is a huge stakeholder because it is already one of the top donors to Indonesia for relief aid. This collaboration would continue to bring growth through technology, such as Panasonic emergency communications and infrastructure implementation. USC, TDMRC, and Universitas Andalas and IOTIC would partner in order to further research on tsunamis in the region and on effects, response, and aid delivery, to be specific. Aceh Tsunami Museum and the Indonesian Institute Center of Public Policy Research Institute and local networks of imams and community leaders would collaborate in order to inform cultural approaches to disaster preparedness and response. With the $5 million budget, 10% would be allocated to mangroves, 15% to education and incentives, 30% to signage and communication systems, and 45% to infrastructure. The national motto of Indonesia is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. Our organization embraces these ideals by creating diverse and inclusive collaborations that put an emphasis on the rich and heterogeneous culture of Padang. As a community, we are improving preparedness education, emergency relief, infrastructure, and technology in order to save lives. Thank you for your time.